Hello and welcome to BharatShakti.in. I'm Brigadier Chatterjee, editor BharatShakti.in. This is part of our series of Neighborhood Watch, and we'll be talking about China today. We've talked about China before also, and it's important enough for us to be talking about this particular country time and again. We'll be talking about China's new border law and whether that law is actually an instrument for Chinese expansionism. On October 23 last year, the Chinese passed this law, and it was in the 1st of January this year that this law became effective. As per this law, it appears that the border areas will have to be protected very deliberately by the Chinese government, and it will be a yardstick of their sovereignty to ensure that the entire border area that they claim is with them. Now, this is in the background of all that we've had in the last couple of years. We've lost 40 men there in a fight with the Chinese, and we've got the entire line of actual control actually disturbed. So, to give us more details about it, I have with me a guest speaker, Major General Ashok Kumar. General Ashok Kumar is a veteran of Kargil War. He's had operational exposure to most parts of the line of actual control. He commanded a brigade in the Songzhongshu area where we had that major problem in 1986-87 of a Chinese intrusion. He's also a defense analyst and is a visiting fellow at the Center for Land Warfare. Welcome, General. Welcome to BharatShakti.in.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Right, General, my first question to you is see, China has 14 neighbors, and they have been able to resolve their disputes, border disputes I'm talking about, with 12 of those neighbors. However, with two of them, it's not yet resolved. Now, what do you think is the reason? Is it just like that, or is it a specific intent?
If you see, China has now come of age. It's 73 years old republic now, and out of 14 neighboring countries, it has already settled its border with 12 countries. The left ones are India and Bhutan, both having the Indian states. Now, if you analyze as to how he has gone about solving the border disputes, a pattern emerges, and therefore, there is a possibility that that pattern can be repeated again while we enter in a negotiation or the conflict resolution with China, whether as an Indian representative or when Bhutan interacts with them. So I shall just highlight, some of those, repetitive patterns which have emerged very, very strongly in his border negotiations. First is that he has always tried the concept of geographical creep. Wherever he is in direct contact with the land, he has done that geographical creep on the land. Wherever there is a sea, he has created artificial islands and then, does this, creep action. He has used militias, he has used the civilians, then thereafter to consolidate and solidify his claims in these areas where he has already done this creep activity. Second, in the conflict resolution, he always operates from the maximalist position that he claims more, but he is also unable to settle for less. If you take the average of the 12 countries with whom he has settled the borders, the average of the claimed area which he has finally got is in the range of 40 to 50%. Third is that he is not in a hurry to resolve the border. His focus is that he wants to resolve it favorably, and that is the catchword. If you see the number of years which it has taken for North Korea, it has taken 54 years. Kazakhstan, it has taken about 36 years. Tajikistan, it has taken 53 years. Russia, 48 years. So he is not in a hurry to resolve and settle the border. He is basically looking at whatever point of time he gets an advantageous position and then he tries to settle that. Again, another pattern which is emerged is that he respects force. When Russia and China fought in 1969, or Russia and Vietnam fought in 1979, since the outcomes were not favorable to China, In both these conditions, he was more accommodative on the border disputes and related issues between the both the countries. So that is another very very important factor. And of course it tends to compromise when its own internal security is at threat, like when Tiananmen Square happened, or what was happening in Xinjiang and other places, Xinjiang. And so at that point of time he is more unable to accept the viewpoint of its neighbors. So that is another pattern which has been seen. And the possibility of these things happening again, as I highlighted earlier, with India and China, cannot be ruled out.
Right. Thank you, Janil. Thank you so much. I think that was a very detailed explanation to start our discussion. I've got a couple of more questions for you. Next question is, why has China passed the model law at a time, when we have this problem? The Indian troops and the Chinese troops are almost, they were at one stage, of course, eyeball to eyeball. Now they're not so close, but all the same, they're proximate enough to be reacting for certain stimulations and getting the scene, the entire thing heating up. So, again, is there a design in it, or do you think it could sour our relations further? What is your assessment of that?
That is very very important issue you have raised on passing of this law. If you just see this law without being critical, it will appear as if it is any other law which a country could have passed. But its real contours emerge once you look at the timing and the language which indicate to the likely intent which China would be having by passing this law. Firstly, look at the timing. Now we are at the standoff with China from April 20 onwards, and this law was introduced in their Politburo first time in somewhere in October 20, in less than 1 year's time of his standoff happening. And then finally it was passed next year in October 21 when the standoff was still continuing, and it was made implementable from 1st January 22, and it's already implemented. So, firstly, the timing, it has been done as a part of its lawfare technique to critically claim the areas which it has been, claiming so far, whether it is in Eastern Ladakh, in Arunachal Pradesh, or elsewhere. So, by doing that, he has also incorporated certain clauses in this law which are very, very critical, and where I would like to draw your attention, because then its real situation will emerge. Firstly, as I highlighted earlier, that he believes in the concept of geographical creep. To manifest that, what he had done, he has created 624 model villages close to the LAC or on the LAC. In fact, in Upper Subansiri Valley, since 1959, there's already a village which is supposed to be in Indian part, but already in its position since then. And number of more and more villages are coming where he is trying to put its hand population from interiors, and so that the demographic pattern can be changed. And with these villages he is doing that creep, and in this law there is a shuttle portion where it gives a lot of responsibility not only to the PLA, to the PAPF, but also to the civilians. They, it makes them the stakeholder to defend the country's territories, and it has deliberately changed the conflict from the territorial integrity to the sovereignty. And therefore in any future negotiations, normally whenever you go for border settlement, there is always give and take. It never happens on the viewpoint of one country. It is a practice world over. Now with this law getting passed, wherever it has put its claim, that being part of the sovereignty claim, the negotiations in future, if there is a political will from both the sides, even at that point of time, it is going to be very very difficult, because when it's issue of sovereignty, then the nationalistic and number of other contours come up to play, as against a territorial dispute where it is easier to give and take. So that is one major change which he has done. And another important issue is that the whatever action it is going to do either in India or in Bhutan or even in Taiwan, it is giving a legal cover to all those actions. It has already been passed a law earlier in Hong Kong, which gives the extraterritorial jurisdiction to China. And similar kind of attempts can be made in the disputed areas of India, Bhutan, and of course, the whole Taiwan from its own perspective is, disputed and its part. So extraterritoriality will be also a big issue. And illegal claim on Arunachal Pradesh, which it has been claiming, not honoring the McMahon line and a number of other regions. So, with this law, it may stake a claim and it has the right, as per this law, to use its force to go in for occupation of those areas which it claims. Whether it does it or doesn't do it, that is a separate issue. But the constitutional authority and the national stakeholders' responsibility has already been synergized to take this action should the country so decide. So that is a very, very important. And because of this enhanced role of civilians, what is happening? On one hand, he's bringing civilians close to the LAC. It is bringing it to in the disputed areas under its own possession. And secondly, those wherever there is a civilian settlement, it is telling them that now it is your responsibility to defend, and if you do not do that, there will be a lot of actions being taken against. Punitive action has also been contemplated against those people who do not take action for safeguarding the national interest in those areas. So that is going to be very, very challenging, and
Okay.
I think in days ahead there will be a lot of issues of
Okay.
conflict generation in these areas.
Right, General. Thank you. What I understand from what you speak is, as far as it becomes a sovereign duty, that's what is the more a sovereign duty. I would say it's always a sovereign duty to protect the land of the country. But this border
Absolutely.
imposes such rules a little more firmly. So future generations today and even future generations will find it difficult to negotiate with us. That's what you're trying to say. But let me say that there is a case. I don't see them really pressurizing them so much, but let me see that there is a case that they really want to follow this particular law in letter and spirit along the line of actual control with India. In that case, how do you see things going? Really?
Well, that is a very, very alarming issue. There are serious implications for India if they decide to execute these, norms which are there in the law. If you see, before 2013, there were a number of agreements between India and China to maintain the peace and tranquility on the borders. One of those parameters were that in future negotiations, we will take care of the interest of the settled population. So far, we were thinking this being favorable to India because we were worried about its insistent claim on Tawang. And since Tawang was a settled population of a very larger magnitude, we had thought that now with this clause being coming, now Tawang will never be discussed, and as and when the border gets settled, Tawang will continue to be part of India as hitherto. Now what is going to happen really for India, uh, that now it is bringing that the same game he is going to play with us in a different mood. Firstly, the border areas where it doesn't have any population, he is getting these villages created. Then he is settling the population. Since we are already in agreement that we will not disturb the settled population, so it will imply that by these physical presence of these villages on LAC or in the disrupted areas, our capacity to get anything in negotiation in future in our own law and agreements will get defeated, and the current status quo, whether we are in a disadvantageous position or whatever be the issue, will only be what we can at best get with us without questioning the right of him going back to the cliff. That is a major change which is going to happen with this law. Another aspect is this law prohibits construction activities without the permission of the central government. Now the wordings have been left vague whether he is talking of the construction activities on his side or on the other side which he claims. So that once the border roads develops infrastructure and creates this kind of infrastructure development, whether that can be taken as a garb of launching offensive actions against us in the garb of this law, that also cannot be ruled out. It doesn't mean that based on this he is going to launch an operation tomorrow against us. But should he decide, he has got a legal option to do that. Third is that the enhanced role of civilians, which have already done, that is part of his, salami slicing, or you can also know the gajafication. That is another thing which is doing, in various areas. It partly done, and it is intensifying that in more days to come. And as I told you that the territorial dispute has already been changed to the sovereignty dispute, and options to settle this, further gets minimized. And if you see Article 7 of 2005 agreement, which, I highlighted, that we have both agreed that we will not touch the civilian population, and he has got the increasing tendency to get these civilians closer to LAC. So the entire excitation, he is going to have the civilians settle in some manner whether, and therefore, by own agreement itself, we will not be able to claim and disturb that unless we are strong enough, to ensure that we are able to impose our national will, which is, far off, as per the current parameters. And another thing which you see, between 1993 and 2013, there were approximately five agreements in the span of 20 years to narrow down the differences, that, one on an average at every 4 years. But after 2013, there has not been a single agreement despite number of standoff happening, except that there have been two directives of Wuhan Directive and the Mambalpuram Directive given to the respective countries' armed forces to maintain peace and tranquility. Otherwise, nothing has happened on that. So, therefore, this law per se is empowering the Chinese to enable them to take any future action in their national interest. And they are, already created, constitutional this thing where they
Right.
can, tell this in front of the world community and various world forums.
Got it. Got it. Right, Jill, thank you so much. I think, well, the way I look at it also, let me just share it with you. The fact of it is, you can make any law that you want to do in your country. But when you want to impose it at your borders and another country gets involved, well, it's got to be in tune with the international rules and regulations. So somewhere there, the Chinese are perhaps trying to bulldoze their way through, trying to, let's say, justify it more to themselves than to us, I would say, by passing a law like this. But all told, thank you so much for giving us the ramifications of this law. Jill, thanks a lot for joining Bharat
Thank you.
Shakti.
Thank you very much, sir. It was a matter of honor. Thank you very much.
Uh, Thank you, viewers. Thanks for tuning in to BharatShakti.in, and do tune in like this time and again, and you will find interesting discussions on.